When you think of a medieval castle, what comes to mind? High stone walls, towers reaching toward the sky, maybe a drawbridge over a moat? These images are iconic, but they didn't start out that way. The earliest medieval fortifications were far simpler, yet they laid the groundwork for the formidable castles that would define the Middle Ages. Let's rewind to the 9th and 10th centuries. Europe was in turmoil. The collapse of the Carolingian Empire had left the continent fragmented, with feudal lords vying for power and protection. The solution? The Motte and Bailey Castle. Picture this, a steep earthen mound, or motte, topped with a wooden tower, surrounded by a courtyard, the bailey, enclosed by a wooden palisade. These structures were quick to build and surprisingly effective. They offered a clear vantage point, protection from raids, and a symbol of power. But as warfare evolved, so did castle design. By the 11th century, wood wasn't cutting it anymore. Fire was a constant threat, and attackers were becoming more skilled at siege tactics. Enter stone fortresses, the game changers. These new castles featured thick walls, towering keeps, and multiple lines of defense. Here's a question: how much of modern architecture is influenced by necessity, like these castles? Think of skyscrapers or stadiums. They're designed for function, just like castles were designed for survival. But building a fortress wasn't just about protection, it was about location. Imagine you're a medieval lord deciding where to build your castle. You need visibility, resources, and strategic control. A hilltop offered natural defense. Proximity to water ensured survival during sieges, and being near trade routes meant power over commerce. The construction process was a feat of engineering. Workers dug moats, quarried stone, and erected walls that could withstand battering rams and trebuchets. And all of this was done with hand tools. No cranes, no bulldozers, just human ingenuity and determination.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
But this was only the beginning. In the next part, we'll explore how castles evolved into multi-layered fortresses, capable of holding off armies and changing the course of history. By the 12th and 13th centuries, castles weren't just buildings. They were war machines. Every stone, every tower, every passage was designed with one purpose: to keep the enemy out. The outermost wall, or curtain wall, was the first line of defense. But if you think a single wall was enough, think again. Castles soon adopted concentric defense systems, with multiple walls arranged in layers. Even if attackers breached the first wall, they'd face another and another. Now, imagine being an invader. You've fought your way through the moat, dodged arrows from the battlements, and finally breached the outer wall. What's waiting for you? A kill zone. A narrow passage where defenders could rain down arrows, rocks, and even boiling oil. And then there were the towers. Round towers were preferred because they eliminated weak corners and provided a better field of fire for archers. These towers weren't just defensive, they were offensive, allowing defenders to launch counterattacks. But defense didn't stop at the walls. The gates were equally fortified. Picture a massive wooden door reinforced with iron, backed by a portcullis, a heavy grille that could be dropped to block the entrance. And if you made it through that, welcome to the Barbican, a fortified courtyard where defenders could trap and ambush you. Let's pause here for a deep question. What modern structures are designed with this level of layered defense? Think about how our digital systems, firewalls, encryption, backups mirror these medieval strategies. Defense isn't just about strength, it's about redundancy and adaptability. One of the most fascinating features of medieval castles was the chemin de ronde, or wall walk. These elevated pathways allowed defenders to patrol the walls, fire arrows through loopholes, and drop projectiles through murder holes. Every inch of the castle was designed for tactical advantage. But castles weren't invincible. Siege engines like trebuchets, battering rams, and siege towers tested even the strongest walls. That's where innovation came in. Castles began incorporating features like machicolations, stone projections with openings for dropping rocks or hot liquids onto attackers. It was a constant arms race between offense and defense. Every new siege tactic forced castle builders to adapt, pushing the limits of engineering and ingenuity. In the next part, we'll dive into the human side of castles. Who lived there? How did they survive sieges? And what was life really like inside these stone fortresses? When we think of medieval castles, we often picture grand halls, feasts, and knights in shining armor. But the reality of life inside a fortress was far more complex and often far grimmer. First, let's talk about the people. Castles weren't just homes for nobles, they were self-contained communities. A castle might house hundreds of people, including soldiers, servants, blacksmiths, cooks, and even clergy. During a siege, that number could swell as villagers sought refuge behind the walls. Now imagine this. It's the middle of winter, the castle is under siege, food is rationed, water is scarce, and disease is spreading. This was the reality for many castle inhabitants. While castles were built for war, they were also built for endurance. Wells and cisterns ensured water supply, and storerooms were packed with grain and preserved food. But daily life wasn't all about survival. Castles were also centers of administration and culture. Eudaimizing, the Lord's Great Hall served as a courtroom, a council chamber, and a banquet hall. The chapel provided a place for worship. And workshops buzzed with activity, producing everything from weapons to textiles. Let's think about this. How do our modern cities compare to medieval castles? In many ways, urban centers are our fortresses, self-sustaining hubs designed to withstand economic, social, and even environmental challenges. But castles weren't just practical, they were symbols of power. Their towering keeps and imposing walls were meant to intimidate rivals and inspire loyalty. Even the layout of a castle reflected its owner's status. The closer you lived to the keep, the higher your rank. As the medieval era gave way to the Renaissance, castles began to lose their military importance. The invention of gunpowder and cannons rendered high walls and towers obsolete. Many castles were abandoned, converted into palaces, or left to crumble. But their legacy endures. Today, castles are more than just ruins. They're reminders of a time when survival depended on ingenuity, community, and the will to adapt. So here's the final question. What lessons can we learn from these medieval fortresses? How can we apply their principles of resilience, innovation, and community to our own lives? Thank you for joining me on this journey. The story of medieval fortresses is a story of human ingenuity, determination, and survival. Let's take those lessons forward as we build our own modern-day fortresses, whether they're in stone, steel, or spirit. Castles weren't just physical structures, they were psychological tools of war and governance. Imagine being a peasant in medieval Europe, looking up at a towering fortress. Its imposing walls weren't just a barrier, they were a message. They screamed power, security, and control. For lords and kings, castles were statements of dominance. A fortress on the horizon meant the land was governed and defended. It served as a warning to enemies and a reassurance to allies. The design of these structures played into this psychology. Every towering keep and looming barbican was meant to intimidate. But here's a thought. How do we use architecture today to convey power or safety? Skyscrapers, government buildings, even modern military bases all draw on the same principles. The legacy of castles lives on in how we build to inspire awe or to protect. There's another layer to this story. Castles weren't just fortifications, they were ecosystems. Within their walls, communities thrived or struggled through times of peace and war. Now think about our modern cities. Aren't they in some ways descendants of these medieval fortresses? Today we face new threats, climate change, cyber attacks, pandemics, but the principles of resilience remain the same. How can we design spaces that protect, sustain, and inspire communities in the face of modern challenges? For example, medieval castles relied on wells, cisterns, and granaries to withstand sieges. Similarly, sustainable cities today focus on renewable energy, urban agriculture, and self-sufficiency. The lesson is clear. Resilience isn't just about defense, it's about creating systems that endure. Even as castles became obsolete, their symbolism endured. Today, they stand as monuments to a time when human ingenuity turned stone into strength. They remind us of the creativity that emerges under pressure and the communities that thrive when united by purpose. But castles also pose a question. Are we building metaphorical castles in our lives? Are we creating systems, whether in our families, careers, or communities, that are strong, adaptable, and resilient? The story of medieval fortresses isn't just history. It's a blueprint. It's a reminder that strength comes from preparation, that resilience comes from adaptability, and that even the strongest walls rely on the people within them. As we close this journey, I challenge you to think about your own castle. What are you building to protect what matters most? How are you preparing for the challenges of tomorrow while staying grounded in the lessons of the past? Thank you for being part of this exploration. The story of medieval fortresses is a testament to what humanity can achieve when faced with adversity. Let's take these lessons and build something extraordinary together. The story continues in every structure we build, every system we design, and every challenge we overcome. Let's honor that legacy by creating fortresses of resilience, ingenuity, and hope in our own lives. Even today, castles evoke a sense of awe. Their towering keeps, sprawling walls, and ancient halls symbolize strength and endurance. But beyond their physical presence, castles have become cultural icons. They're settings for countless legends, myths, and stories. From tales of brave knights and epic battles to forbidden romances and ghostly apparitions. Why do castles hold such a grip on our imagination? Perhaps it's because they embody the eternal human struggle, the desire for safety in a chaotic world, the pursuit of power, and the fight for survival. Castles remind us of our shared past and how far we've come, yet also how much we still rely on the principles of resilience and community. In literature, film, and even video games, castles remain central to narratives of heroism and challenge. From the haunting beauty of Dracula's castle to the magical halls of Hogwarts, these structures continue to inspire. They remind us that even in their ruins, castles represent possibility. Medieval fortresses teach us timeless truths that are just as relevant today as they were centuries ago. Adaptability is key. Castles evolved in response to changing threats. As siege engines advanced, so did their defenses. In our modern world, adaptability is just as crucial, whether it's in technology, business, or personal growth. Those who can adjust to new challenges are the ones who thrive. Soldiers, craftsmen, farmers, and lords all work together to sustain life within its walls. Today, our strength still lies in collaboration. How can we foster stronger communities that support and protect one another, especially in times of crisis? Sustainability is survival. Medieval castles were self-sufficient out of necessity. They stored food, conserved water, and used natural defenses. In a world facing climate change and resource scarcity, these principles are more critical than ever. What can we learn from the past to ensure a sustainable future? The power of preparation. Castles weren't built overnight. They required careful planning, labor, and foresight. Whether it's building a career, a family, or a life, preparation is key. What are you doing today to prepare for the challenges of tomorrow? Your fortress, your legacy. As we step away from the towering walls and into the present, let's think about the fortresses we're building in our own lives. They might not be made of stone, but they're just as real. Our homes, our relationships, our ambitions. Are they strong enough to withstand the storms? Are they designed to protect and nurture what matters most? And just as medieval castles were built to endure beyond the lives of their builders, what legacy are you leaving behind? What are you creating today that will inspire and protect future generations? Medieval fortresses are more than relics of the past. They're blueprints for resilience, community, and innovation. They remind us that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, humanity has always found ways to stand strong, adapt, and thrive. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. The story of medieval fortresses isn't just about war. It's about humanity's capacity to create, to endure, and to rise above. Let's carry these lessons forward as we build our own legacies, one brick or one decision at a time. The story doesn't end here. It lives on in every challenge we face and every triumph we achieve. Together, let's build something extraordinary. Let's build fortresses of hope, strength, and purpose that will stand the test of time.